In Windows XP Professional, there are two ways to share files and folders amongst multiple users of one machine and network users. You can either use classic sharing or a new Windows system called Simple File Sharing. Simple File Sharing uses a simplified interface that makes it easy to set up common sharing arrangements. Simple File Sharing is enabled by default on Windows XP Professional systems that are part of a workgroup, but disabled on members of a Windows domain. Windows XP Home Edition uses Simple File Sharing exclusively. Simple File Sharing reduces the complexity of sharing resources by reducing your options in three main areas: permissions, sharing, types of access. When Simple File Sharing is enabled, the Security tab is not available in the Properties dialog box of files or folders. You can't apply permissions to individual files. You can share a folder and the files it contains with all others who log onto your computer, with all other users on your network, or with nobody. You can't pick and choose which users get access. With Simple File Sharing, you give permission for everyone on the network to access and read all files in the folder. You can also choose to allow users to have the full control permissions to the files in the folder. When Simple File Sharing is enabled, a Shared Documents folder and two subfolders, Shared Pictures and Shared Music, are automatically created. Any documents that you want to share with other users who log on to the local computer can be stored in the Shared Documents folder. Enabling Simple File Sharing improves your computer security because any remote user who accesses a shared folder over the network always authenticates as the guest account. For example, you may have a folder that contains several files to which users must have access, but you do not want users to be able to make any changes to these files. If you enabled Simple File Sharing, everyone on your system would have access to the file and be able to copy them to their own machines, but would not be able to change the original files in any way. Under Simple File Sharing, remote users who access a shared folder across the network authenticate as which local account. You can disable Simple File Sharing to get more control over the permissions assigned to individual users. To do this, you need to access the Tools menu either in Windows Explorer or, as in this case, My Computer. You want to access the settings that will allow you to disable Simple File Sharing. Select Tools, Folder Options. The Folder Options dialog box opens on the General tabbed page by default. You want to access settings on the View tabbed page, so you click the View tab. You scroll down the entries in the Advanced Settings section. You can now disable Simple File Sharing. Deselect Use Simple File Sharing. Click OK. Once you have disabled Simple File Sharing, you can set up a shared folder under Windows XP in a similar way as you would have done under previous versions of Windows. You want to disable Simple File Sharing. Perform the steps that allow you to do this. Suppose you have a folder named Advertising, which you wish to share with other users on your system. You have opened a local disk C window from My Computer. You have selected the Advertising folder, and now you want to access the settings that will allow you to share it. Select File, Sharing and Security. The Advertising Properties dialog box opens on the Sharing tabbed page by default. You want to ensure that other users will be able to access the Advertising folder. Select Share this folder. A share name for the folder, which is the same as the folder name, is automatically entered in the Share Name field. In this case, the share name is Advertising, but you can change this if you wish. You can add a short description of the folder in the comment field. In this case, you type Advertising Campaign Files. It is possible to set the user limit on each folder that you share. You select whether you want to share the folder with the maximum number of users, or whether you want to specify the maximum number of users that will be allowed access to the folder. To view or configure the share permissions for the advertising folder, you click the Permissions button. The Permissions dialog box for the advertising folder lists the group or users who have access to the folder and the permissions they are granted. The default for Windows XP shared folders is for the Everyone group to have read permission. This permission lets everyone view file names, folder names, and data within files, and they can also execute application program files. In this case, you do not want users to be able to modify the advertising folder or the files it contains, so you accept the default permissions by clicking OK. In previous versions of Windows, the default permission was Full Control. Full Control is an unsafe permission, as it allows any user to modify the object to which it is applied in any way they wish. To apply the settings you have configured for the advertising folder and close the Advertising Properties dialog box, you click OK. A graphic of a hand appears with the advertising folder icon to signify that the folder is now shared. The third method of sharing a folder is to use the net share command at the command prompt. Suppose you wanted to create a share for the Promotions folder, which is stored on the C drive. Type net space share space promotions C:\promotions. Press Enter. The command returns a message that tells you whether the share was created successfully. Another way to create a shared folder is by using the Create Shared Folder wizard, which becomes available when you install the Shared Folder snap-in in the console root. What is the default share permission for the Everyone group under Windows XP? You want to allow other users to have read access to a folder named Budget. Perform the steps that allow you to do this. Executing the net use command from the command prompt is one of 3 ways in which you can connect to a shared resource under Windows XP. The second method of connecting to a shared folder is to enter a Universal Naming Convention (UNC) path in the Start Run dialog box. Suppose you wanted to use the Run method to connect to a share for the advertising folder, which is stored on a computer named NYWS303. Type //NY-WS303 Click OK. If you have a valid user ID, correct password, and appropriate permissions, you will now be connected to the shared folder. A window opens in My Computer in which you can view the files that are contained in the advertising share. A third way of navigating to a share is to use the Add Network Place wizard to create a link to the share in My Network Places. In My Network Places, you click Add a Network Place. The Add Network Place wizard launches and guides you through the process of creating a link to the share. You want to connect to a shared folder named Marketing, which resides on a computer named LPT6602. How can you do this? Suppose you have a shared folder named Promotions, which you no longer wish to share with other users. You have selected the folder, and now you need to access the settings that will allow you to stop this folder from being shared. Select File, Sharing and Security. The folder's Properties dialog box opens by default on the Sharing tabbed page. You want to prevent other users from accessing the Promotions folder. Select Do Not Share this folder. Click OK. The hand graphic is no longer present with the Promotions folder icon, which signifies that the folder is no longer shared. In Windows XP Professional, you can either use Classic Sharing or a new Windows system called Simple File Sharing. Under Simple File Sharing, you use a simplified interface to set up common sharing arrangements. Simple File Sharing is enabled by default on Windows XP Professional systems that are part of a workgroup. By turning off Simple File Sharing, you will have more control over the permissions to individual users. If you choose to disable Simple File Sharing, sharing folders under Windows XP is similar to setting up shared folders in previous versions of Windows. When you create a shared folder, you can set the user limits and assign permissions to your specifications. You can allow a certain number of users to access the folder, or you can choose to allow the maximum number of users to access it. You can assign permissions on a per-group basis. You can stop sharing a folder entirely, and this will prevent any remote users from accessing the folder or files contained within it. You can connect to shared network resources in 3 ways. You can type a UNC path in the Run dialog box, navigate to the share through the My Network Places window, or use the NetUse command from the command prompt.